All About Relationships is an engaging, lighthearted, and practical show designed to help people improve their relationships in meaningful ways. Hosted by Dr. Don Allen, a certified Gottman therapist, as well as an advanced trainer for the Institute. He is also certified in emotion-focused therapy. With over 40 years of experience in the field of psychotherapy, Dr. Allen is here to provide expert guidance on strengthening marriages, parent-child relationships, friendships, and more. Through insightful discussions, audience call-ins, and guest experts, viewers receive real-world strategies to enhance intimacy, communication, and overall relationship satisfaction. So now, please welcome the host of All About Relationships, Dr. Don Allen.
Hello and welcome. This is episode 6 of our second season. And this is all about relationships, working towards ideal marriage and loving relationships. Today's title is Seen, Soothed, Safe, and Secure. This is a shout out to Dan Siegel's research. Oftentimes I use the Gottman Institute and the genius and wisdom of John and Julie Gottman. But I wanted to change a little bit today and talk to you about something that I consider very important from Dan's research. So, like I said, a shout out to him. I really encourage you to go to Dan Siegel's website. Something that's he does that I really particularly like is called the Wheel of Awareness. It's a meditation guided imagery. And if you go to that and you do it, I think you'll find that that's a really, really good way not only to meditate, but to kind of go into self-discovery and learn how to have a better balanced body as well as mind. So shout out to Dan. And again, please visit his website. I think you'll find that you'll be happy you did. So one thing that I kind of want to talk about, in your relationship, do you feel seen by your partner? And by seen, I mean heard. Right? When you talk, you feel that the person stops and really pays attention to what you're saying or experiencing. Okay. When you do you feel like in any situation that it's really safe to bring anything to your partner, right? Anything that comes up during the day, can you lead with that? Now, sometimes, that word safety has been batted around on the media. And it makes sense because it gets people to watch TV. But part of what I mean by safe is you ever kind of say to yourself, gee, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, or boy, I can't say nothing. Those types of expressions, that is kind of what I'm talking about. It's kind of like, is it safe to bring something up? What's going to happen if I bring something up? So you feel safe to do any topic, really. The next is it soothing to bring that? Now, I'm going to talk a little more about attachment theory today, but what it means is, and this sounds counterintuitive, when you have a relationship as just fundamental as like a relationship with a parent, child, but particularly your person, because this is all about all relationships. I'm just kind of focusing on couples relationships right now. But is it soothing to bring a issue to your partner, even if the issue that you're bringing is something that they're doing that's making you mad, it's making you upset, that boy, you did that and it really upset me? Because instinctively, even when we have a situation where our partner is making us angry, our partner is the first person our body wants to go to take care of that problem and to be recognized for, hey, you gave me an owie, you gave me a hurt, you did something that made me feel bad. John Gottman says, within every hurt is a longing, which in every complaint is a longing. So we want to bring our longing to our partner. And then the last one, the last S, is secure. Can I count on it? When I have a problem, can I count on the fact that I can bring it to my partner and resolve it? And, to really get fancy, one of the things that we look at in the relationship house, which is the positive perspective, once we've dealt with a conflict successfully, we just forget about it. Yeah, we're done. Okay, yeah, that was unfortunate. It happens. People do that. But you know what? If I ask you 2 weeks from now, you'd probably go, "Oh my gosh, we did have something. Oh yeah, I can't remember. Don't remember that." Okay. So, when you look at that, do you feel seen, soothed, safe, secure? And again, part of seen means heard. So we're going to talk about that today. This is the wisdom of Dan Siegel. This is I'll give you some citations if you really would like to look at this. What kind of books he wrote it in. But really want to shout out to him. I through National Marriage Seminar attended a weekend workshop with him, and I actually assisted him and the National Marriage Seminar to support that, and really had the privilege and the pleasure of talking to Dan. And just he's one of the big gurus of our time. He really is. He's an A-lister, and he's amazing. So again, we're lucky to have him. And please, if you want to know more about this, go to him and his website. But also, I'll give you some of his books. You might like that too. Um, but you really want to have the kind of relationship that you can count on people every time. Okay. So always like to put up, if I have it, just the information for me. If you want to get in touch with me, if you want to talk to me about anything through my emails and stuff, I'm donallen.aar.bbtv@gmail.com. You can find me there. Please go to my website at donallenphd.com. That's Allen, Allen. So donallenphd.com. You can look at a lot of the pre-shows that I've done, but also just get to know me a little better. And hopefully you'll feel more relaxed with me and feel more comfortable in sending me an email or some kind of information that you might have, that you worry about, that you'd like me to use on the show. Always would like that. We will get to a point where we'll even do some call-ins so people can feel comfortable with that too. But the show is basically what goes into successful relationships, but it's also what undermines them. What gets us away from that ideal that we had, or maybe it gets us away from that lightning in a bottle that we once had, that we really would like to have again. And then sometimes, to the ugly, what destroys relationships? Okay, what happens with that? I'll tease you a little bit. In a couple weeks, I think on the 24th, I've got a guest coming on that just wrote a book, and I will let you stay tuned to me to find out more about what he's going to talk about, and how you can use his book to heal relationships when they have trouble. Okay. So, but my hope is ultimately we're interactive, that we'll be talking, that we'll be able to do this in a way that that helps you all. This is a show about you. I love Stump the Band. I love it when people give me really tough call-ins, because that's, I think, when I'm at my best. Also, I love to be spontaneous. So I like to have something come up that just allows us to really talk. The other thing too is, if you bring something up to me, I'll bet you there's tons of people out there that are going to be glad you did, because I talk about things that I commonly hear from people. But when it comes from you and it comes from your heart, it really makes me feel good, because now I have a chance to really help not only you in a meaningful way, but other people. Okay. So today, what we're going to do is talk about seen, soothed, safe, secure. So just put some questions out there to maybe resonate with you, so that you'll know what we're going to be talking about. And hopefully what you'll say is, wow, I want to listen on, because Don's going to help me with these kind of questions. All right. So the first question: ever feel like you're living with a stranger in your own home? One thing I think about that is, was it always that way? Or did something happen that made it get to the point where that's kind of what you're experiencing? Ever feel like when you started out in your relationship, you did feel seen, soothed, safe, and secure? But as time went on, a lot of the dreams that you had when you got married slowly started giving away to drift. And remember drift, that's a couple episodes ago. Go look at it. Or that your dreams started giving away to other things that just became more important. And when you notice the pain of that, did your partner know that you were experiencing it? And if they didn't, do you feel like you can bring it up? We're going to be talking about that today. When communication does break down, how does it affect your partner and the story of what they are living? Sometimes we get involved with our own stuff and we don't stop to realize that our partner is drifting away from things inside of them individually that made them really, really hurt. And are you aware of it? Are they aware of it? Right. So, is this the story that you had and they had envisioned before they got married? Is your life that? Life changes on us. And a lot of times it changes on us in ways that we had no idea. Or, look at 3 years ago, which seems like 3,000 years ago. Look at COVID. Who saw that coming? And how did that impact us? And now our lives are different. Well, sometimes that requires a discussion, right? When was the last time you both monitored the problems that I'm talking about with each other, that you sat down and did a check in? This is good. We're going to have an opportunity to look at it today in more detail. And then with our fourth segment on what are we going to do fun for this week, we have an opportunity to do just that, right? So the other thing I kind of want to say, and especially shout out to Dan Siegel, are you aware that your kids are watching you? Right? Kids a lot of times absorb how to be by experiencing life with you in the house. They see whatever's happening is just how it is. They don't see other houses. So are we teaching them connection or are we teaching them disconnection? And one of the ways we can be disconnected is to not talk about whether we're feeling seen, soothed, safe, and secure. So that's what we're going to do today. Okay. So to the good, just want to transition a little bit. Dan Siegel is a psychiatrist and a psychologist, I believe, and he's a relationship expert, and he's one of the world class people we have on this planet, and we are lucky to have him, like John and Julie Gottman and like Sue Johnson for that matter. But he's written extensively on how our closest relationships not only shape our senses, a sense of safety, but it also shapes how our brain is wired, right? So let's pay special attention to that because we know more now in the last 20 years. Our field has just exploded with how to do it right. So that's what I'm giving you, and that's a pretty cool thing that we have this ability and we have our show to kind of do this as a community, right? So he wrote a book in 2020 called The Power of Showing Up, well, along with him and Tina Payne Bryson. And this is where he describes the four S's. Okay. And again, seen, soothed, safe, secure. So what he says, though, is it's an essential ingredient in every bond, whether between parent, child, or partners. This idea of is that happening? I know when I do work in my own office, I do kind of consciously in my own mind monitor when this couple's talking, are they feeling seen, soothed, safe, secure? Now, again, our show is education. It's not psychotherapy. But this is one of the things that I think is rudimentary to good relationships ongoing. So that's why we're doing it, right? When these are missing, the seen, soothed, safe, secure, what happens is a lot of times people begin to feel a slow drift. And again, go back a couple episodes and watch my drift show. I think it's a really good one. And it does fit my idea of it's true 2,000 years ago, and it's probably going to be true 2,000 years from now. But then what happens is the drift can happen enough that all of a sudden one day we're waking up and we really feel disconnected from our partner. Okay. So with regard to that, now it starts seeping over to the family. Children don't just hear our words, they watch how we connect. If we model disconnection, they grow up believing that that's normal, right? If we model that connection, they have not only inherently a way to do it, but they also feel the security that comes from it. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. This idea of how this gets away from us and how we bring it back. But remember, especially with drift, it's those slow connections towards each other that are happening each day. John and Julie Gottman really tell you, the secret to high functioning relationships is little things often. Doing things that we know we need to do, regardless of whether we get a reward for it. So if we're doing something really nice and our partner appreciates it, that's so important. Recognizing that even without that being seen, we're getting into fall here. I hail out of Austin, Texas, and one of the things I noticed at the store the other day was they had butternut squash now, and my wife really likes butternut squash soup, so I made it for her. And I put it together and really worked with her to see if that's the way she liked it. How did it taste? And then what I did, and this was probably more important than the squash, I cleaned the kitchen, right? Because I don't know whether you've ever made butternut squash. I personally like to cook, but it makes a mess. And I'm using all sorts of appliances to make it. For example, if you make a butternut squash, you're going to want to puree it. And I had to use a blender that purees. Well, it makes a mess. So anyway, I didn't leave her an hour and a half worth of mess to make her an hour and a half soup. Those are little scene soothe, safe, secures, right? Because I could see that she's not going to want to clean up after me, right? And it's nice to be able to make those little bids for connection with her to see if she likes it, but make it the way she likes it, right? So those are just little things we can do. I'm noticing that we are up for a break. So what we're going to do is we're going to do just that. When we come back, I've got mail from the mailbag. We're going to talk about specifics with people who are talking about, hey, Don, what about this? I love Stump the Band. And then I'm going to get into how we do the Scene Soothe Safe Secure in our third segment. We'll see you shortly, and I can't wait to get into it. See you soon.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
All right, we're back with our second segment, which I call the mailbag or shrink wrap, something like that. And I like this segment a lot because it gets to your concerns, but also I like to play Stump the Band. And what I mean by that is I don't give a lot of time to look at these questions. So you're kind of getting them right off the cuff with me, which like I said, I kind of prefer. So one of the things that we are worried about in relationships is that slow, unnoticed emotional distancing. You know, people kind of know that. I mean, my joke with that is you get married and that first year you have all those adjustments, but basically you start to settle down. And especially after you have kids, you start noticing that you're acting like your parents, right? Which isn't a bad thing. I don't mean it that way, but I do think we do kind of settle into ourselves and get back to old patterns of how we were growing up. Probably more so before 12 than high school years. High school years, we kind of go out with our buddies all the time. But again, just kind of settling in, that old expression, the chickens come home to roost. But we kind of do. We kind of get back into some old familiar habits. The problem you're having is so does your partner. And your partner may have very different habits than you do, which requires a conversation. Now we're starting to get too busy. We're into our media. We're working too hard. We've got all of those things our kids are doing. And the next thing you know, we aren't having conversations. Matter of fact, we are not making bids towards the relationship at all. We're making bids towards the soccer game on Thursday or the practice on Tuesday or something. But again, we're all settling in with that, right? So ignoring these bids for connection causes us to be businesslike, conflict avoidance, and loss of novelty. One thing I've talked about before in past shows is this idea of spontaneous. We want to be spontaneous. When we start to have fears and worries and stuff, we get to be more controlling or even rigid controlling, and that can even lead to chaos. So, we can't do that. And by the way, those things, spontaneous control, rigid control, chaos, shout out to Dan Siegel. That's where I learned all of this. So I want to give that to you. And we also want to celebrate Dan, right? But the emotional impact, right? Intention versus impact, right? The emotional impact is it's not a fight we're having, it's a fade. We go away from each other, right? So remember, you may not intend to hit a car, but if you do, there's going to be an impact. You may not intend to not have bids for your partner, but the impact on it is drift. So this is where we're paying real close attention. And then after these shows, you're having a conversation with your person. Okay. So this is why I do this show. I do this show because you all need this, right? One thing I haven't done, and I may do it, I don't know, but I haven't gotten a lot of A-listers on my show. And the reason for that is A-listers, there's a lot of glitz and glam with them, and I'm not knocking them. Some of my favorite people. I happen to be in the Texas area. Brene Brown is here. I think she's just a rock star. So don't get me wrong. I love A-listers. But some of the best wisdom you're going to get are from the people in the trenches that just do this. They write these books that may not be global bestsellers, but they really know what they're talking about. I'm bringing you those folks too. And I hope you notice that. The other thing too is a lot of people like us, or a lot of kids like us, I want to build this community for us. And it's really important that we do it. Really important we stick together. And that's why it's so important you give me feedback so I know how to go back out there and help all of us. So that's why we're doing this. Okay. So first question, here we go. Let me read it. Why does my partner's criticism immediately shut me down? All right. Well, criticism is going to do that 96% of the time anyway, right? When we feel criticized. The antidote for criticism with the four horsemen, that's John Gottman and Julie Gottman's research. The four horsemen is complaining with a gentle startup. Don't be provocative in your complaint, but do not criticize, or 96% of the time, you're probably going to get either stonewalling or defensiveness. Why does my partner's criticism immediately shut me down? Well, now this is getting back to my theme. Do I feel safe to bring up issues with my partner? So you got to ask yourself, right? Because I might answer this person directly, but I'm asking this generally to the public. You have to ask yourself, what's shutting you down? What is it that shuts me down? All right. So that's an important thing. And you're going to need to bring that to your partner, and you need to feel safe to do it. Right. So why isn't that happening is the first answer I would have for you to do. And that's a precursor to bringing that to your partner. Now, if you don't feel safe to bring it, we're going to talk about that in the next segment. Next question. We show up for our kids, but in our marriage, we feel emotionally flat. How do we reconnect? Well, in 2 weeks, my guest is going to talk about this very thing, but I've alluded to it earlier. And that is what John and Julie call attunement. A-T-T-U-N-E, attunement. A is awareness of our partner's emotions. When you start to have a difficulty, ask yourself, what's my partner experiencing? What am I experiencing emotionally? It's really important because emotions create hierarchy for what we do and how we do things. Very important that we are aware of our emotions. If you have trouble with emotions, a lot of people do, you can go on the internet and you can get an emotion wheel. Dan Siegel, shout out, will say, name it to tame it. That's his one of his big things. He gives little sound bites. I love that about him. And one of his is name it to tame it. And what that means is we know that when we use emotional words, it helps keep us in what he calls the window of tolerance, which means that we stay calm, right? So name it to tame it. So the first thing we want to do is be aware of our emotions. The next one is we turn towards our partner in a connecting, loving, and vulnerable way. So do we do that? Now remember, the Gottman Institute is going to say we have to approximate that 86% of the time. We have to. So that's what we try to shoot for. right? But we can't let that drift down into especially below 33%, or we're going to go into attachment distress for sure. The next one is tolerate. One of the things I say often is we're people and we mess up all the time. We mess up all the time, and that's normal. We shouldn't feel guilty or shameful about that. We just say, doggone it, we did it again. We need a do-over. And think of how many times you mess up during the day, even though you're trying your best. So we need to be forgiving, we need to be gentle with ourselves, and we need to apply that same gentleness to our partner. So that's the next one in Attune. The next one is understand before we seek to fix. Before we, go into problem solving, and we have trouble with that, us humans. I would say, hey guys, we have probably more trouble with that than gals. I don't know. I think scientifically I'm right. But what I mean by that is we like to fix it. Okay, well, this happened. Well, do this, right? Oh my gosh, I got in a big traffic jam today and I was home an hour late. Well, if you just take this other road, you probably wouldn't get in that. Well, your partner probably doesn't need a solution. What they need is to say, oh my gosh, honey, you mean to tell me you had to sit on the interstate for an hour? Oh, that's awful. Tell me all about it. That's understanding. And it's also accepting influence, because we're able to be influenced in understanding where our partner is experiencing their life. Very important, especially we guys, accept influence. We've talked about that on prior shows. The next one is non-defensive responding. And part of that is taking responsibility for our part of it. Okay, just non-defensive responding. When we respond, if we're explaining something or we're giving more information about something, we want to do it in a way that's non-defensive. Because if we do it in a way that has attitude, it has shoulders, it has looks, it has rolling eyes, then people are going to feel defensive, and they're going to see us as defensive. And here's a big thing with Seen, Soothed, Safe, Secure. If they see you that way, then they don't seeing their pain. And remember, a lot of what people bring to us is just their experience that they want recognized and soothed for. There's that soothe word, right? And then the last one is empathy. Empathy is, I don't know what you're experiencing, but I can really listen to try to understand it. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with it, but you might be able to see why they feel or experience that in that way. So again, when we show up for our kids, but in our marriage, we feel emotionally flat. How do we reconnect? When you do talk, remember that. Write it down. You can stop my show and go back and write them down. And then ask yourself, is that happening? If you're doing this well, you can't use four horsemen. At least if you know how to do it and use four horsemen, let me know, because this is one of the ways I shut down four horsemen. Okay. Next one. How do I know if I'm just oversensitive or if my partner really isn't seeing me? Okay. The secret to this one, let me think about it. The secret to this one is, what do I feel inside when I'm bringing up the issue? So here's another one that you want to attune to your own emotions, right? How do I know if I'm just oversensitive? Well, if you don't think that your partner understood you, or they're just giving you a quick, this is what you do, honey, you're not probably feeling listened to. Well, listened to is seen. So that's what I'm saying. You want to know your experience. And then I would even go further, is ask those four questions. When I am bringing something up that's really important to me, do I feel seen? Is it soothing to bring it up, or am I trepidatious? Am I worried, right? Is it soothing to think that I can bring it up and I can count on feeling soothed when I bring it to my partner? If you are, chances are they're attuning to your emotional ability to experience a situation and caring about it, which is also empathy. And then, back to, can I count on it? And, boy, when I do this, I get my head bit off. Well, you're not feeling like you can count on your person showing up. So what are your countermeasures? Well, a lot of times countermeasures is drift and distancing, right? I mean, I suppose people say choosing their battles, right? I always say, if you bring up a bunch of complaints, you're probably criticizing. So we got to kind of take that in chewable bites. Don't bring up a ton of criticism. A ton of complaints. If you're doing the criticism, gentle startup and light complaining. Sorry about that. I goofed. And then the last one I want to talk about. They shut down when I try to talk. This can be a common thing. This is where people avoid conflict. So we got to be very, very careful with that. But what if I don't feel safe in opening up? Talk to your partner about needing to feel safe. Be in a climate where you can bring vulnerable intimacy to your partner and receive it. And if you're having trouble with that, it requires a conversation. Believe me. Okay. So that's just so important with this. Let me see. I wanna look a little bit here too. Um, I keep saying the same thing to be heard. What am I missing? Well, one of the things that you can do with that, I'm going to talk about in my third segment. And that is, how do you go about going back and forth and staying on one topic? A lot of people, what they do is they meander. They get to one topic, then another, and then somebody activates, and then they upregulate, and then the next thing you know, it gets to be defensive, and then a horseman starts happening. And you notice how I'm talking fast and fast and fast. I'm doing that because that's what the conversation happens. A lot of times people aren't listening. They're waiting for you to take a breath so they can start. That's what we want to slow down. And then we want to add or interject the attunement with that. Okay. That's kind of where some of this stuff is happening from the mailbag. I hope this is helpful. In our third segment, I entitled this "How to Feel Seen, Soothed, Safe, and Secure." So we're really going to look at these things in a way that make us be comfortable, I guess, with having a conversation with our partner. It's very important. A lot of cultures don't feel that conflict or bringing up conflict or having a conflict is good. We know from research that the Italians and the Israelis are particularly good because they just see conflicts as a normal thing they need to resolve, and they do it in a loving way. So what we want to do is to be more comfortable with it and to make that part of our culture and our traditions in our family. So let's take a break, stretch a little bit, come on back. I'm going to get a drink of water, do some commercials, and when we come back, I'm going to talk to you about how to feel seen, soothed, safe, and secure. We'll see you shortly.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
All right, we're back. A lot of people give me feedback that this is their favorite section because we kind of started thinking about our own lives. We started thinking about, oh boy, you're right, this does happen to me. What do I do about it? And then a lot of times the mailbag is, that makes sense. That happens to me too. And one thing I love about that is that this is what I say. We're all in this together. We all experience a lot of the same things, kind of life in this world. So we can have cultural aspects of it, but this stuff is kind of rudimentary to all people. All people usually have insecurities. They usually have frustrations. We know that we don't avoid conflict, we expect it. And with that, we're going to have frustration, right? a lot of times anger is when we have a goal that's being blocked. If I'm on the interstate and I plan to get home and I have to go an extra hour because of a traffic jam, my goal of getting home has been blocked. So we get frustrated, we get angry, those types of things. It's just normal human experience to have that happen. So we don't want to feel blame and shame. What we want to do is to say, okay, what are the skills to get this out of the way? That's why I use the term weeding the garden. You go out and you need good vegetables, you need good fruits. And what you need to do is you need to nurture the land and follow the rules of the land, and then take regular time to tend to it. And then what you get is a wonderful harvest. The wonderful harvest for us is when we're 80, we have a lot of joy, a lot of good memories, right? Right. So, there's an old expression, you can close your eyes to reality, but you can't close your eyes to the memories. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this so that it's better for us and our partner and the people we love. Just a good times had by all. Good, good traditions, good Thanksgivings, good Christmas. Have a nice fall. Look forward to all of those things. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to do. So, in Dan Siegel's The Power of Showing Up, the 4 S's: seen, soothed, safe, secure, is the foundation of that secure attachment. One thing Dan points out to us is you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to show up. You do have to show up. Well, avoiding stress is not showing up. Avoiding conflict is not showing up. But what you do want to do is you want to show up with both hands open, nothing up my sleeve. You want to show up with that. And you want to show up in a loving, caring way that invites our partner to say, yeah, I want to talk to you about that. Let me know what's going on with you. That inquisitive nature is showing up. It's accepting influence from our partner, right? So that's really important. Remember what I said earlier, when we don't feel like we can do that, or we feel like listening to somebody else is caving, is somehow being weak, we take away all of our power, and it undermines relationships. That is an ugly. So we have to be careful, right? We know from research, and this is interesting, but we know from the male research that if men can't accept influence, 81% of the time, it undermines relationships. So that's not negative about us. It's cautionary. We know to avoid that. How do we accept influence? Tell me all about it. I really care what you have to say. I get it and I appreciate it. I appreciate you, and I get that this is important to you. We do it with kids all the time. We really need to do it, especially in our relationships. So the definition of safe, according to Dan, is feeling protected, not under threat. All right. Gosh, can't say anything without getting your head bit off. That isn't like you're going to get a punch in the nose, but it threatens me to not talk. It shuts me down. So safe is feeling protected and not under threat. Seen is truly being heard, not just listened to. That somebody understands, wow, you're really listening to what I say. And when you kind of reflect on it, you really get it. Remember, folks, you don't have to agree with what your partner's saying, but you do have to say it makes sense to me that you feel that way, and come up with some very genuine, from the heart reasons why you agree with that statement. Okay, so very, very important. Soothing is that 86% that John and Julie Gottman talk about, but Dan talks about turning towards, not away, when you're stressed. It's easy to do it when, things are great, but even when you're stressed, you're under duress, right? You turn towards your partner. Now, this is one of the things I referred to earlier, which is what I call vulnerable intimacy. Vulnerable intimacy, which is leaning to your partner with things that maybe you feel embarrassed about, maybe you feel ashamed about, maybe you feel worried about. And, you might even say, I know I'm worried about it. And I know it's kind of silly when I think about it. But even in those situations, you can bring it to your partner. It's really important that we have that mechanism in our relationship, that we can bring even things we think are silly to our partner, and it won't be made fun of, it won't be mocked, it won't be done in a way that, the Gottmans call contempt, which is describing your partner as defective. Well, you're stupid for thinking that. Well, that's so silly. That worries you. What's wrong with you? Never do contempt. Describing your partner as defective is going to shut this down probably faster than most anything else. And then you're going to start affecting those 86% bids. You're going to start moving towards the negative perspective and not the positive perspective. It undermines trust. It undermines fondness and admiration. Don't do it. So it's very important we move the other way, which is towards soothing. And then security is trusting that your partner will show up again and again and again, right? Just like the sun rises in the morning, it's going to happen, right? Seen, soothed, safe, secure. So you're secure in knowing that tomorrow's another day. You're secure in knowing that your partner is always going to take time for you and be there for you, right? So history is not destiny, right? You don't have to keep going down the road for it. So, all right. So just very, very important. Well, how do you do this? All right. Well, I've already talked about attuning. Attuning is, what I mentioned earlier, awareness of one another's emotion, turn towards, tolerate we're humans, understand before we seek to fix, non-defensive responding, and empathy. If you have drifted away from this, okay, and that's kind of why I bring it up, and I keep saying it over and over again so you get used to hearing it. If you have drifted away, it's important to have regular conversations with each other that are non-defensive, and that invite vulnerable intimacy. Very important. That's true of the Gottman Institute. It's true of Sue Johnson's work, and it's also very much underlined in the Dan Siegel research. Okay. One thing I put down here, and these are kind of mine, but I'm taking it off the Dan Siegel stuff. Take responsibility for where you think you could have done better. So kind of what I heard you say is this, what I could have done better in that is listen to you more. Here I'm trying to fix it and you're just telling me why you're scared. And here I keep going to fix it and you keep going to where you're scared. I'm sorry about that. That's the antidote for defensiveness. Take responsibility. Shoot. Let me try it again. Let me try it again. So take responsibility where you think you could do better. And you're modeling that to the other person. That means you can mess up too, right? And I'm going to be cool with you because I want you to be cool with me. Okay. So what you might do is after you take responsibility for where you think you could do better, ask your partner where they think they could do better in return. Now you've created an environment where it's safe to do it because you did it. And then, hey, look, you messed up, I messed up. We got to be cool with each other, right? Because it's always you two against the problem. The minute it becomes you two against you two, now you start tangling up. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. So when you take responsibility for where you think you could do better, that's one of those where you feel seen and your partner feels seen. And that also means heard, but what I said earlier with what Dan was talking about. The next thing is really listen to your partner and not have the style of discussion that feels like a debate, right? Where, again, you're waiting for them to breathe so you can jump in and tell them what they need to know. And you never really heard what they needed to know either. And they figured that out. They picked it up and get away from that. Get away from that. So really listen to your partner and not have the style of discussion that makes you feel like it's a debate. Rather, listen and paraphrase your partner to where they can say, yeah, you understood me. Hey, no, that's really what I said. Thank you. That's very soothing when they can go, thank you. That's really, really something that I needed from you today. Boy, that's a breath of fresh air. That's a long, tall, cool drink of water, right? Okay. But then have your partner do the same, right? So you go back and forth. But you notice when I talk to you about this back and forth, you notice I'm doing it slow. Slow down. Slow down. You don't have to solve this in 10 minutes unless that's all you got. And if that's all you got, you better plan to have some more time later, right? Okay. If your partner shows vulnerability, reward it. One thing I'm very fond of saying, if you're having a discussion or an argument, it doesn't even have to be from something you said, but your partner gets so scared that they start tearing up and crying, you don't have to keep talking about the discussion. Stop and really deal with, my gosh, you're really upset, aren't you? Right? And women, and you're pretty good with this, women by and large, but husbands don't necessarily tear up and cry. Now we're getting better at it. So if you're out there doing it, I'm I'm praising you. I'm not saying what's up with you. But see, a lot of us were raised where showing tears or showing emotion or showing weakness, especially during sports, was not enjoyed by the coach, let's just say. So all I'm saying is there's a time for that. If I'm in a sport and I need to focus on it, well, you have no time to cry about that. But boy, when you're with your partner, I love to see the vulnerability. But wait a minute, you need to know how your partner's showing vulnerability too. If you're with a guy, you need to show it. And even if you're with a gal, that's true. Although one thing I notice about lesbian relationships is they do pretty well at attuning with emotion. Not all, obviously, just like anything else, but again, I noticed that. If but if you're, in that relationship and your partner is showing emotion and it's not like tears, know how they do it so you can slow down and reach for them too, right? So just very, very, very important. All right. But reward vulnerability. Don't debate it. Don't try to fix it. Just reward it. Okay. The other thing, too, is when you get into a situation where you're talking with emotion, stay with the emotion. Oh my gosh, that's really scaring you. Tell me all about it. No, but we're talking about what to do with the car cost. There's plenty of time to talk about how much it's going to cost to fix the car. But right now, you're worried about this. Let me see your emotion. Let me hear that. Plenty of time to fix stuff, folks. Plenty of time. Stay with the emotion. Okay. Now, if you're finding that this is choppy, boy, we did what you said, Don, but I'm telling you, it's a rough road to hoe. Have regular check in meetings and celebrate what's working. In other words, what you might identify with this is that you've drifted farther than you even thought or would have liked to. What the antidote for that is more regular check ins doing exactly what I'm talking about. And this stuff dovetails so nicely with the Gottman Institute stuff, so nicely with attachment and Sue Johnson and emotion focus therapy kind of theory. Hey, folks, you've got three major brands of empirical science telling you to do it. I would listen to them. We need to accept their influence too, right? Okay. So it's the working overtime that creates the security. Okay. That's where the last one is, the secure. Okay. Ideally, I wrote this down. Ideally, we should have the kind of relationship where if you do have a conflict, you look forward to talking to your partner because you feel closer at the end of the conflict than you did at the beginning. So that's one of the ways that you tell you're doing this right is if, oh boy, I have a beef. I can't wait to talk to my partner about it. Even though we have to hash it out and it's uncomfortable, we're going to feel closer. And then when you feel closer, cuddle, hug, smooch, sit there, put your head on your partner's shoulder, tell them how much you love them, and tell them why they're so uniquely awesome. Okay. Really, really slather that on. People love it and they need it, especially from their partner. Okay. So we need to look at that. So let me look at my time. I think I'm about due for a break. We're going to come back and we're going to do that fun exercise we all do for the week. And you're going to get back to me and tell me whether it worked or didn't and what you like more of. But we need to do so in a loving way. And we need to listen and take a page out of our partner's book. Okay. So Dan Siegel's work, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up. That's 2020 copyright. History not is not destiny. The power of showing up is 2020. Let me think. What else do we have? I think there's one more, but I'm not seeing it right offhand. So let's get to break. I'll look for that, see if I can find it. But I highly recommend you go to Dan's website and remember that wheel of awareness. We'll see you in a minute.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Okay, we're back. And one of my favorite parts of the show is to take all of this and make it fun and make it something you can do at home. I'm going to try it too. One of the things I love about that, I mentioned A-listers and stuff. And when I say guru, like with John and Julie Gottman or Sue Johnson or Dan Siegel, these people are exceptional world-class people, and they give us incredible research, and it's predictive. It works. And if you don't do it, it works in the opposite. So it's just really, really great. But there's so many people that are just on the front lines that are really, really good at what they do. I'd like to think I'm one of those. I've had over 40 years of experience now. And, it could be easy just to say, you know what? I don't think I have to do any of this stuff. But boy, I really want to put this out there for people to have it. Remember, one of my criteria, if it's true 2,000 years ago and it's going to be probably true 2,000 years from now, I want to talk about it. If it's not going to be, I might use it as a contemporary issue that really fits that, right? So that's kind of the way I do this. But the real reason I'm doing this is because we all need it. And this stuff is really good. I want to put some A-listers, I guess, but I really want to get just folks that are out there in the trenches that really know their stuff that we can all enjoy. So I'm hoping you're noticing that. I'm hoping you're experiencing it. And what I need from you is for you to come back and tell me, Don, tell me more about this. Tell me more about this. I really care about you. And it really matters to me that people have better relationships. I keep saying it's not a fair fight. People really, really are torn away from relationships in our society. And this will help us not do it. So I care, and I want to know from you. So what we're going to do this week is I want you to plan a time to sit down, a relaxed time of the day or the weekend, someplace where you can have a little bit of time to talk. Okay. Then, in a non-threatening way, ask your partner, do they feel seen, soothed, safe, and secure when they bring up anything with you? Do they feel like they walk on eggshells? Well, you might get a sometimes, in which case you want to say, tell me all about it. So does your partner feel that way in all four categories? If so, ask them why they feel seen. And they may say, well, honey, every time I bring something to you, you always care. You're always there for me. And you always act and be like it really matters to you. Boy, that's when it happens. But if they say no, say, well, why not? How come? What goes on to make that happen? Remember last week, when I really needed to talk to you about this and you were so busy that you just really never got around to talking. I didn't feel that you really listened to me and how important it was to me. And you know what else? I didn't feel like you saw that it was worrying me. Oh, well, what you don't want to say, well, in that situation, that's why. No, that's defensive, right? And that's kind of what I call digression to the literal. I mean, that's my own fancy term. You're never going to see it anywhere else. But what digression to the literal means is if I can take your example and neutralize it, you don't have a problem. It's illogical. It's not. A lot of times examples are something to pinpoint a general problem. What you always want to do, in my opinion, is let's go to the general problem. Okay. So now when they say, I didn't feel comfortable. Take turns answering that question for each other, and then you're going to use that to go back to. But the other side of it is after they give, whether they feel seen, soothed, safe, or secure, what you want to do is to have your term to do it. And then what you want to both try to do is to do that in an attuning way, right? I gave you a tuning so you can practice that. Okay. So if they feel one of the S's is more happening than others, don't be defensive. But what you want to do is say, okay, let's take that one this week and make it an assignment to try to do better, right? Then at the end of the week, check in with each other to see if it was better. If it was, then ask why. What did I do to make it better? Well, that's answers to the quiz, isn't it? Okay, well, I can keep doing that. If it's not, keep working on making that better, right? So that's one of the big things that you want to do. If you get tangled up, right? If you still get tangled up, what I want you to do is go back and look at the third segment and then use that as a template to get it better. So, you know what? I'm looking at my time. And as always, whenever I do these shows, my gosh, the hour goes fast. But thanks for staying with me. I hope you go back with your partner and watch this show again and have the conversations that I'm imagining you having. Remember, I care about you. If you do this stuff, we know from research, generally gets better. If you don't, it generally doesn't. And it's true for me as well as everybody else. So I'm Dr. Don Allen. Remember, this is not a fair fight. We're all in this working towards a better tomorrow. And I look forward to building our community and continuing to enjoy these shows. Take care of yourself, and I will see you next week, Wednesday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, and every other time that flows across the world. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you then.
While All About Relationships is educational and entertaining, it is not a substitute for therapy, counseling, or professional advice, but an informative space for learning and growth. So tune in each week for an engaging and reliable approach to your relationships, ensuring viewers with practical tools to create deeper connections in their daily lives. Whether tackling conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, or family dynamics, this show is your go-to resource for anyone looking to foster healthier, happier relationships in a supportive and lighthearted environment. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern.